Good morning and welcome to the Rockfire Resources PLC investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time by the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Just simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it is appropriate to do so. Before we begin, I'd like to submit the following poll. I'd now like to hand you over to David Price, CEO. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining me this morning. We've got a lot to get through with Rockfire. There's a lot to update, and I've also been answering a number of questions that have been submitted prior to this presentation, and I will encourage you to ask more questions as we go through the presentation, and you can submit them, and hopefully I can get through most of them. And this presentation will focus largely on the Copperhead project. Of course, we've recently announced our maiden JORC resource, and of course the acquisition of Moly in Greece, a zinc project that perhaps there's still a lot of questions as to Moly and what it represents for the company, and I hope I can answer them for you this morning. So I'll go through this presentation. You'll see a number of the slides are familiar and have been in the presentation previously, and I won't dwell on them. They have been there for a while, and you are at liberty to view this online and on our website at any time. So I'll move forward with the slides here. So this is a new image just showing the location of our projects. The critical aspect of this slide is on the left-hand side. You'll see the JORC resources there. We have 131,000 ounces of gold. If you take a lower cutoff at 0.2 grams per tonne gold, you end up with 208,000 ounces of gold. The gold ounces that I'm quoting there at 131,000 ounces are at a half-gram cutoff. And that's deliberate because the half-gram cutoff gives you more feel for the economics of the project and the viability for it to be economic in the future. So 131,000 ounces at half a gram cutoff. We have 800,000 ounces of silver at Plateau. Now, both of those, the gold and the silver, are at Plateau. And recently, you'll see the 120,000 tonnes of copper equivalent at our Copperhead project. So you can see here that these resources have all been included into the resource base for Rockfire in the last 12 months. We've achieved a lot. We've moved all of our resources. We've upgraded the Plateau resources, and we've introduced our maiden copper resource. We are building this company. We are building the company with solid resources and value in our JORC resources. One of the messages I'd like to say to you very, very clearly, there are a few companies, junior companies, with resource bases of gold, silver, and copper in JORC, and that is a great position for us to be in. We are building that base. We plan to build that base. We will continue to build that base, and it's very important for shareholders and potential investors to understand that. The bottom, underneath those green ticks on the left there, you'll see 173 drill holes with high-grade zinc has been introduced through the Moly project in Greece. So we will have resources in very shortly, gold, copper, silver, and zinc. Now, they are strategic. They are very deliberate because we're looking at precious metals and base metals. From day one, we said we are an explorer of precious and base metals. That hasn't changed, and we are determined to build this company based on those exploration successes. You can see there on the bottom left, our projects are 100% owned by Rockfire. That's deliberate and critical for us, and we'll maintain that as long as we can. And that's the reason that we will be building shareholder value. The board and management hasn't changed. We have a very stable board, and the board is very, very supportive of what we are doing. And we have critical skills throughout the board. And I'll leave that slide there because that has been there for a while. The board has not changed. I appreciate the support the board gives me, and they're a great board to have there sitting. They direct the company very, very well. The corporate snapshot, you can see there the market cap, £4.4 million at 0.41p. The share price is very low. There's been a number of questions about the value of the share price at the moment. A lot of comments about the undervaluation of the share price and the resources that we are putting into the company. Holder of the company too, it is clearly in my interest and your interest for us to get that share price up. I'm fully aware of that, and it's something we are addressing. If you look at Queensland, that slide has been there for a while. It's a great jurisdiction to be in. Everybody seems to know that Queensland is a tier one investment destination. It's got lots of gold, it's got lots of copper. We are finding gold resources, we are finding silver resources, and we are finding copper resources. We plan to build on those, and as I say, it's a great place to be. We'll start quickly with Lighthouse. I have compressed a lot of the slides just to summarise Lighthouse for you. You'll see the JORC resource there, 3.9 million tonnes at 1.1 grams per tonne gold, 131,000 ounces of gold, 800,000 ounces of silver, as mentioned previously. The Plateau Gold Deposit, that's what it looks like. That's the three-dimensional modelling of the gold at Plateau. You can see the dimensions are given there in the central breccia, and the dimensions are also given on the right-hand side on the eastern breccia looking towards the northwest. As I mentioned earlier, if you look at the 0.2 gram cutoff, it's on the bottom left of the screen there, 11 million tonnes at 0.6 for 208,000 ounces of gold. I tend to prefer quoting the 0.5 gram cutoff on the right-hand side because that's more indicative and more reflective of the economic potential for the project. You'll see 3.9 million tonnes at 1.1 grams per tonne gold. There's 53,000 ounces of that, 131,000 ounces, that are in the top 100 metres. So 100 metres is not unrealistic for an open cut. Bearing in mind we have 2 operating gold plants within 50 kilometres of Plateau. So I haven't spoken to any of the neighbours yet. I want to build those resources. And this is one of the things that we'll be doing throughout 2022, is actually doing near-surface drilling, RC drilling, to expand those near-surface resources of gold. Over the wet season, we've actually been doing soil sampling in and around some of the prospects immediately adjacent to Plateau, and that is designed to be able to provide drill targets for the 2022 field program. So that work has been ongoing. And we'll continue to build those resources. These resources are still wide open in all directions and, of course, at depth. So this is just the start. We will be building them, and we're also in conjunction building our copper, which you've seen this year, and our zinc. So it's great to be able to have a number of these commodities up our sleeve. It's sometimes the gold price, as you're well aware, is very fickle, and the gold price can react very, very quickly one way or the other. And to have the other commodities, the silver, the zinc, and the copper, is very useful because it means that we can hedge our bets if the gold price decides to go down significantly. And as we see, the copper price and the zinc price are increasing quite dramatically. So it hedges our bets on that. And also, as I say, it provides great value in the resources that we have in the company. Moving to Copperhead. Copperhead, you can see there the new resource. I've quoted on the bottom left of the screen there, 64 million tonnes of 0.19% copper equivalent, 120,000 tonnes of copper equivalent. Now, interestingly, a lot of people have said, oh, but 0.19%, it's not economic. Well, you're right. It's not at the moment. But bear in mind, the reason is there are 2 ways of looking at this. One is we've drilled a tiny fraction of the copper in soil anomaly and the geophysical anomalies. That's number one. So we've got a lot of area to still drill out. The second thing is that bear in mind that the copper price is increasing. The demand for copper is increasing. The production of copper is decreasing, and the average grade of open cut copper mines is decreasing. At the moment, the average worldwide copper grade for open cut bulk mining is between 0.25 and 0.3% copper. So it's not out of the realms of possibility that in the future, as demand increases, production decreases, and the price increases, as I say, we will actually end up that price and average grade will continue to come down, and hopefully, as we explore Copperhead, our average grade will continue to increase. So there are a number of aspects there. So for people to just simply write off Copperhead because it's 0.19% copper is clearly not valid, is the answer to that. Copper Dome. We're looking forward to drilling Copper Dome later in this year, probably Q3 this year. One of the questions has been put to me when we anticipate drilling that, and we are looking at Q3 this year for Copper Dome. This is just a reminder of the magnetic targets that we have underneath Copper Dome. You can see there that the high mag porphyry copper gold targets, bear in mind that this is copper gold, it's not copper moly. Copperhead is copper moly and Copper Dome is copper gold. So you can see there in the center of the screen, the historical drill holes. There's a 1972. They hit reasonably large intervals of low-grade copper and low-grade gold, and very typical low-grade copper gold targets at surface. And then we have these amazing porphyry targets at depth. We don't know what they are. They're quite deep. As you can see, the arrow on the left-hand side, it's 500 meters down to the top of those targets. So the drilling to date hasn't looked at them. So this is pretty exciting for us to have these here, and we plan to look at those, and we'll initially put one hole into each of those to see what they are. But they're distinct anomalies, and we're hoping that it's going to be the feeder zone for what we have near surface. So that's Q3. We'll be looking at drilling that, and pretty interesting to see what's down there, and quite exciting to see what might be down there. And on to Moly. Now, Moly, there's perhaps one thing that may not be well known in the marketplace, and that is that between 1997 and 1999, I spent those years living and working in Greece. I was the country manager for JORC Resources, and we were exploring the Sapis gold project in northeastern Greece. And at the time, we had bought that project from Newcrest Mining, and we had 100,000 ounces of gold defined by previous drilling. And Newcrest considered it was never going to be big enough for them. So we acquired that as JORC Resources, and we moved the project from 100,000 ounces to over 1 million ounces. And at reasonable grade, that was sitting around 12 grams per tonne gold. So it is a very good resource. And at the time, during my tenure in Greece, I successfully submitted the pre-approval study, which is a very important step towards production and one of the critical permits that you need to get for that project. Ultimately, JORC was bought out, and shareholders made a lot of money from that sale. So at that time, I maintained my contacts in Greece for the years since. For all those years, I've had very close contacts in Greece. I have always kept a very, very close eye on projects in Greece. And Moly was in the archives, and I discovered Moly in the archives. And I approached the government and said, could we perhaps apply for this tenement, this license? To which they promptly said no. And the reason is that there's a decree that says that Moly is important to the Greek state and that only the Greek state can explore and mine that project. There's one caveat on that, and that is that the government can elect to take Moly to an international tender. And so I requested that they take that to international tender, which they did. And we had a number of participants in that, and mostly Greek participants. And fortuitously, Rockfire and Hellenic, the local operating company, won that bid. And here we are today with the Moly Zinc project. So it's an outstanding project. It has been dormant for many, many years. And as you can see there on the bottom left of the screen, we have a 30-year tenure, 2052, and it does include the mining rights. So that's fairly critical to keep in mind as well. It is high grade zinc, and I've included a slide here for your interest on the uses of zinc, just to sort of bring home how versatile zinc is. And you can see there on the left-hand side the list that I've put together of what is zinc used for. So there's all sorts of commodities. There's pharmaceuticals. There's all sorts of products that use zinc. And probably more critically, on the right-hand side, you'll see zinc in renewable energy. And this is where the green energy with our copper resources at Copperhead and potentially JORC Resources in the future of zinc, then the company is in a really great position for these to meet these green energy demands. Zinc batteries are cheaper than lithium. They don't catch fire, which a lot of the lithium batteries are renowned for. The zinc batteries have a longer charge hold rate, and photovoltaic, the solar power technology, increases the energy conversion. So this is a great use of zinc. There are multiple uses of zinc, and it's a really good commodity for us to be in. Why Greece? Well, first of all, it is democratic. I think Greece is the bosom of democracy, from what I'm told. And so we're in a very democratic country, and tier one country for investment. Licenses are granted for exploration and mining rights. And Rockfire is to acquire shortly 100% of the shares in Hellenic, which is the local operating company. That process is in train, and it will be completed shortly. That then provides Rockfire 100% of the exploration and mining rights to Moly. You can see there the Greek gross domestic product chart that I've got. Now, that's Greek domestic product from mining. Now, interestingly enough, you'll see that there's an upward trend occurring, but Greece, this underground zinc mining is not new to Greece. There is an active underground zinc mine in the Chalkidiki Peninsula, which is part of the area south of Thessaloniki, and that's being mined actively by Eldorado. So of Canadian, the TSX listed Eldorado. So they're actively mining underground zinc in Greece. Greece has a very well-known mining act, a very well-tried mining act. So the Greeks know exactly what they're doing. This is not new to them, and they're familiar with underground zinc mining. And so, look, it's a great asset, as I keep saying, because it's a great jurisdiction, it's a great commodity, and it's a great project. And I'll show you a bit more about that project now. These are some of the historical drill results, and you can see here that I've highlighted the intervals, and that's to show the width of the downhole intervals of zinc that were encountered and the zinc percentage grade. If you look at the far right of the screen, you've got the combined zinc equivalent. Now, if you look at typical underground mining, a yardstick might be that if you have 10% zinc equivalent grade, you're likely to be in the realms of economic potential. Now, as you can see, we far surpass 10% zinc equivalent grade on the far right. And that, by the way, these are not averages. These are some of the highlight grades and the highlight intervals that I've included in here. So in 1985, the government produced a resource estimate. They did further drilling and upgraded that resource in 1988. Now, we haven't quoted that resource deliberately, and that is that those resources are not compliant with the JORC code. And what we're presently doing is doing resampling of the old core, which we have found. And so we'll be trying to upgrade those resources to JORC compliancy as quickly as we can. So that's one of our priorities, is to get a JORC compliant resource so that we have a base from which to start our exploration and our expansion of this deposit. You can see here, this is what the deposit looks like, looking towards the north and through a valley. You can see on the left-hand side of the screen, you go up a hill, you come down into the valley in the middle of the screen and up towards more hills on the right-hand side. You can see there's a pimple of topography, for want of a better term, bang in the middle of the valley there. And you can see there that we've plotted the pink being plus 10% zinc. These are not zinc equivalent, by the way, plus 5% red. So the pink and the red plus 10 and plus 5%. Now, between the left-hand side and the pimple in the middle, those drill holes, it's about 1.5 kilometres, and that has been extensively drilled. So there's, look, the bulk of the drilling has been in that zone. When you look further along the valley, you'll actually see some of the grades. So now I think I can draw on this. Here we are. Let's see if I can do this. Will this work? Up in here. There we are. I hope you can see that. So those sporadic holes, that's 5.5 kilometres of strike, and those holes have hit high-grade zinc. So the potential of this is quite enormous, actually. So I'll show you as we go through, and we can explain that 5.5 additional kilometres there. So I think the next slide might show this. It does. So here we are. I'll draw again because I do enjoy this. This is great. I'll draw with that one. Okay. So this blue area here, this is our modelled zinc. So this is 1.5 kilometres in here. And you can see there the black dots are the drill holes. And you can see the red, which is the targeted zinc. This is the preferred lithology that hosts zinc. It extends for 5.5 kilometres along the strike towards the northwest. I've provided there just a couple of examples, 4 examples of the grade of zinc and the widths that have been encountered in historical drilling. So although the resource historically is sitting there, which dominates that 1.5 kilometres, there's potential for 5 times that as we move towards the northwest. That would be the upside to this project as we look forward to exploring this going forward. So that's an exciting project. There's a lot of upside to this, and there's evidence already that high-grade zinc has been encountered. So that gives me a lot of encouragement for this, and certainly a lot of excitement for what we've got ahead of us. Zinc starts at the surface. On the right-hand side, you can see there, that's my arm, and there's the zinc sitting out in the ground. You can knock it, you can sample it, and it starts right at surface. Now, we don't have any plans for open-cut mining. I think at this point in time, we've informed the government that open-cut mining in Greece is probably not the most socially acceptable pathway for production. So they agree. They said that it will be a lot more acceptable to the local community for underground extraction, considering also that there is already a portal site there. Excuse me. You can see there on the left-hand side, that's the capped portal. So we're looking at evaluating and assessing the potential to reopen that mine. We have spoken with the government when they developed this mine. They said that they used a lot of steel support underground and timber support. They feel that it's likely to be still in reasonable condition. So that is yet to be seen. But what we're doing now is an assessment. What is required to remove that cap and look at re-entering the underground? What are the costs involved with that? So that's what we're doing currently. And that means that if we can reopen this and it's feasible to get back into the underground, it gives us immediate access to the ore at around 50 metres from surface. So that's a great position to be in. And that should take us just below the oxidized zone into some of the transition and perhaps even some of the fresh zinc ore. So that's exciting, something we'll pursue. And obviously, as we pursue that then becomes access for us to be able to drill from underground. The infrastructure. This was discovered by the Greek government in the 1960s. They've drilled 173 diamond holes. They have initial non-JORC mineral resources, as I mentioned earlier. They developed the portal and the decline in 1988 to 42 metres below surface, just under 50 metres. We're 10.5 kilometres by road from the coast, and that's critical for bulk mining of this nature, and particularly as we plan to produce concentrate. Then we have potential access to markets by sea routes. So obviously, if you can barge your ore to a smelting facility, it means that you minimise your road maintenance costs, your upkeep costs of roads, your taxes on roads, etc., etc. So it's great if we can use that port. and be able to transition our ore to the markets via that port. There's no prior analysis for gold or copper, and that's something that we will be doing routinely because we believe that there is potential for the gold and copper. We don't have evidence for that yet. Some of the historical core has been sampled sporadically for gold and copper, and they did have low-level gold and copper in them. So we will continue to analyze for gold and copper, which will, if successful, will add benefit to the critical elements in this concentrate. There is potential to host indium, germanium, and gallium. These are listed as critical metals. And I'm afraid you'll need to look up, as I did, what indium, germanium, and gallium are used for, because they're fairly rare sort of metals. So there's a paper that I read that that Moly deposit is actually prospective for these critical metals. So we are analysing for them. Just in case. So one never knows. If you read an article that's published about it, let's explore it. Let's not miss any opportunity there. So we will analyse them for them. And if we don't get these critical metals in the first 3 or 4 or 5 rounds of analysis, then we'll start to drop them off that routine list. So we analyse for each of these elements. It's what we do on all of our prospects. On every one of our prospects, when we first drill, we analyse for the entire suite of elements to make sure that we don't miss anything. We'll do the same thing here at Moly. Fast track towards production. It's often a well-used phrase, but in this case, we actually have some quite distinct advantages. We have historical core to be examined, which we've now seen. We're going to photograph the core, which we've photographed some of it, and sampling. We have now sampled some of that core. The work program will be submitted to the government for planned drilling for the next 5 years. The Community Advisory Committee will be established to provide community input. And reopening the existing portal, as I said, will be appraised. We're planning underground extraction only at this stage, and I think from a social acceptance point of view, that's a fairly prudent decision. We're planning to start our environmental baseline studies immediately, because what that is a 12-month period of environmental monitoring of the existing environment prior to then producing an impact statement. So we want to get that environmental baseline study under our belt as quickly as possible. The processing, as I mentioned earlier, will be using conventional flotation. And in summary, as I mentioned earlier, we're in a great position as a company. We've got gold and silver, 130,000 ounces of gold, 800,000 ounces of silver in Queensland, 120,000 tonnes of copper equivalent now in Queensland, and soon we'll be looking at converting the historical drilling results into JORC Zinc resources. So we are determined to upgrade and increase value in the resource base of the company, and I'm hoping that as we go forward, that will be reflected in the share price. And that's the end of the presentation there.
David, thank you very much for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab situated in the right-hand corner of your screen. But just while David takes a few moments to review those questions submitted today, I'd like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. We received a number of pre-submitted questions that David has kindly written responses to, and we'll publish those responses post today's event. We've also received a number of questions throughout today's presentation, so thank you to all the investors for submitting those. David, could I just ask you to read out those questions and give responses where it's appropriate to do so, and then I'll pick up at the end.
Yep, no problem. So the first question is, how open are you to new projects, or do you have enough on your plate operationally and financially? The answer to that question is I think we have enough on our plate at the moment. We've certainly taken on a lot with the Moly Zinc project, and that's obviously a new development that has been realised within the last month or so. So at this point in time, we've spent an enormous amount of time over the last 3 years looking for the right project. And when Moly was identified, it's high grade, it's in a great jurisdiction, it's got great infrastructure. It made a lot of sense for us to actually go for that project. So having had resources estimated previously, historically, it's a good project. But at this point in time, I think if we were to take on another project, I think it would probably stretch us not only financially, but also operationally at this point in time. The second question, are you planning on deep drilling Copper Dome in Q3 22? Well, I hope I answered that adequately during the presentation. At Copper Dome, we will be looking at those targets at about 500 meters depth. And I'd like to be able to put a hole into each of those red bullseye targets down there and see what they are. And so, look, that's I hope it was answered adequately during the presentation. Do we have interest from other majors? Look, at this point in time, not. I believe that just from discussions that I've had in passing, that a couple of the majors have liked and commented on some of the posts that we put on LinkedIn. And you'll be able to have a look at our LinkedIn profile. So actually, the LinkedIn profile there's a really good photograph of some of the core that we've been sampling at Moly. So please feel free to have a look at the Rockfire LinkedIn profile. But look, at this point in time, no, we haven't spoken with any majors at the moment. And as I say, there's a critical point when you should start to look at those majors and talk with them. And I don't believe we're there yet. I think that given the resources that are potential at Moly, I'm hoping that, one day we'll get a tap on the shoulder from a major, because we have zinc resources, we'll have copper resources, we'll have gold resources, silver resources, and that's a great place for a junior company. So at this point in time, we have not spoken with any majors, the time will come that we probably will need to. One of the sayings that I tend to believe in quite strongly is that very often projects outgrow the company, and we will probably find that does occur for us as well. You mentioned that you were heading over to London sometime in Q2. Is this still the plan? Yes, it is. Now, we're planning the last 2 years, I think, we've had to have our AGM due to the COVID restrictions, hold our AGM remotely. So we're planning to have our AGM in London in person. So I hope you all come along. And of course, during the AGM, I'll be able to update everybody again. And it's hopefully this year we'll be there for the AGM. But yes, the answer is we'll be there, and looking forward to meeting hopefully lots of you. So I'm hoping also that through our broker Allenby, we can get together and put on a presentation of Rockfire to bring everybody up to date in London as well. And the final question here is, what is the next piece of news flow we should expect? Well, great question. And probably the next bit of news flow will be the results of some of the resampling of the historical drill core. So that's something that we're looking forward to. And that's part of the verification process. It's part of our technical due diligence. And every time we pick up a new project, we have to be able to verify the historical drilling. And that's what we've done at Copperhead, which was successful, and it matched what was found historically. And we were able to build on that and make a much larger copper footprint from that was discovered in 1972. Similarly, at Moly, we'll be able to verify the analysis of the old drill core, and that gives us a great platform to be able to build those resources going forward. And that's all the questions there. I have answered a number of them that were submitted previously prior to the presentation. So you'll be able to read them at your leisure.
David, thank you very much for that. I think you managed to address all those questions from investors, and of course, the company will review any further questions submitted today, and will publish those live and those pre-submitted responses on the Investor Meet Company platform. Just before redirecting investors to provide you with their feedback, which I know is particularly important to the company, David, could I just ask you for a few closing comments?
Absolutely. I'm just going to go back to this slide here. I'll just bring it up on there. Now, this second last slide, I think it summarizes everything. We've been working very, very hard over the last few years, and we don't put out a lot of RNS, and everybody criticizes me for that, but I put out the important RNS. I don't want people to have to yawn every time we put out the RNS, because we put out an RNS every second day. We put out the critical information, and it highlights the achievements that we are hitting, the milestones that we're hitting. And I believe that the milestones you see there on the screen in the last 12 months is testament to what we've achieved. We've achieved a lot. And, as I keep saying, there's very few junior companies with solid bases of resources. This is what exploration is all about. If you're not there finding gold resources, finding silver resources, and finding copper and zinc resources, you're not doing your job. So this is what we're doing, this is what we're building, and we plan to continue that.
David, thank you very much for updating investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll now be automatically redirected to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, and I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of Rockfire Resources PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation, and good morning to you all.